Good morning and welcome to First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church. My name
is Joe Burnham, and I'm pleased to be your co-celebrant this morning.
And welcome to our Sunday service. My name is Annie Furster, and I minister to this congregation. The name of the congregation is, as I said, First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church. The name of the street we are located on is Sandy Lane. The name of our board president is...
Whoa! Annie.
Yeah?
Hang on. What's with all the names? We don't normally give our address and introduce our members of the board at this time.
Well, the service this morning is about the importance of names, and I wanted to provide full disclosure of our identity, our names, if you will.
Well, okay, but I don't think we have to name everybody and everything in the building to get their attention.
I suppose you're right. But we're in the middle of changing our name, and it's important to think about these things, about what naming means. But wait, you're on the name change committee, aren't you?
I am.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do. We voted last November that we would change our name to something more meaningful, like who we are. We, the committee that is, have been collecting proposed new names ever since.
And you're doing a great job. That list of names in the patio window is amazing. And the nomination process is apparently still open according to the insert in the order of service.
You're right. And what I find amazing and wonderful is that the children and the youth are also participating in the suggestions of new names for the church.
Then you don't really need me to be naming things for people. You've got it all under control, don't you? Good job. Then let's talk about what else is going on in the church.
Well, the children's religious education is getting ready to start back up next month, and simultaneously, we're going to have adult RE.
Okay.
And it's planning an opening program for the adults and the at the same time, and a rotating series of forum discussions, classes, information, and fun. The Stewardship campaign will kick off next month.
That's right.
Also, I want to remind everybody about my pet project, Don't Forget to Feed Me.
Tell us about that for people who don't know.
What Don't Forget to Feed Me is, we supply dog and cat food to all of the food banks in the Fort Worth area. So people who rely on the food banks to feed themselves also get a chance to once a week go and get free dog food and free cat food for their pet. And it's not just a state amount. If you have a 50-pound dog, you get an appropriate amount of dog food to feed your dog for that week. And you can go back every week and pick up an amount of dog food or cat food for your pet friends. And I'll be collecting donations after the service if anybody would like to donate $1 or $2 for the Don't Forget to Feed Me. Thank you, Annie.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And just in case those of you who know that we have a teleprompter see us reading our script this morning, I thought I would tell you that the teleprompter is broken, but that would be a lie. The truth is, I forgot to send the script in. I want to tell you the truth. So we've got a lot going on here, and I think what we need to do right now is prepare ourselves for worship with some beautiful music.
Hey.
Thank you, Misha.
When we introduce ourselves to another person, we usually extend our hand and summarize ourselves with one word, usually, "Hello, my name is Joe." These are the kinds of face-to-face greetings that initiate relationships, that open our hearts and act as a bridge of connection from one person to the next.
But there's another kind of one-word naming of others that goes on in our larger society that tends to burn bridges, locks down relationships, and keeps us from living our promises to each other. You know the kind of words I mean. These are not words I need to repeat here, for repeating them simply gives them more power. These are words denying inherent dignity. These are the words that undermine and attack inherent worth, for these words have one powerful, hurtful message. You are not worthy. You are not human. You are not enough.
Throughout my life, I've had plenty of those words, those labels ascribed to me. So many that although I may stretch out my hand and say, "Hello, my name is Joe," what I feel when I'm saying at times is, "Hello, I'm worthless," or "Hello, I'm just a woman." I'm part of a religious community because we promise not to reduce each other to the terrible labels, not to strip each other of our humanity, not to ascribe to levels of worthiness of one another.
Most of us need to celebrate life, to feel our inherent worth, to be restored our dignity, to practice justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Most of us yearn to say, "Hello, I'm somebody," and to be greeted, "Hello, somebody, you're welcome here. We're glad you're here." Most of us hunger for affirmation and celebration in who we are and in the gifts and blessings we bring to this world. Most of us come here to be greeted as the loving, generous, compassionate people that we are.
Each of us has at least one blessing. I believe that each of us offers many blessings to this world in who we are. But sometimes we in our world, even our beloved community, might have a difficult time affirming and seeing those blessings. So right now, we're going to have a little exercise.
Yes, indeed. Inside your order of service, unless they fell out because they were very tiny and little, you will find a blank name tag. If you do not have one in your order of service, raise your hand because I have people that are willing to hand them out. Jillian, can you get us some of the extra name tags? There you go. She'll come around. And if you need a pencil to fill out this name tag, she also has pencils available. Okay, now look into yourself at this moment and discover again one of your blessings, one of your gifts to the world. Maybe it's that you're a loving person, a peaceful person, generous, compassionate. There's so many traits and so many blessings. What is your best blessing? And write that one word on your name tag and put your name tag on. And when you leave the sanctuary after the service this morning, I want you to greet each other by saying the name you read on your name tag. Hello, honesty. Nice to meet you, compassion. I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about this and to write. And you don't have a pencil, I'll bring mine over to you. Okay, and use your hymn book to write on so that you have a backing that will show things up. There we go. All right, people are doing this. Good. Joe, when you're finished writing your blessing, would you say the final words of this reading?
Yes, ma'am.
bottom of page 4.
We are all blessings to this world. Our work of building bridges of connection by finding and naming and affirming those blessings we are is the work of nurturing our spirits and healing our world. And I would just like to add, I am seriously grateful for this religious community here at First Jefferson.
Thank you. Please join us now in singing our opening hymn, number 86 in the hymn book, but the words will be on the screen. Blessed Spirit of my life. Please stand. While we light the chalice. Why a flaming chalice? The question comes.
It's a cup of life, we answer.
A cup of blessings overflowing.
A cup of water to quench our thirsts, our spirit's thirst.
A cup of wine for celebration and dedication.
A flame of truth, the fire of purification.
Oil for anointing, healing out of chaos, fear, and horror. Thus was the symbol crafted generations ago.
And so may it be for us in these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage.
And Joe, would you light the chalice as I say the last line? And a light to warm our souls and guide us home. Thank you. And Joe, would you lead the affirmation?
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another.
You may be seated. I have just one question for you today before we get into the sermon part, and that is, how do you want to be known, both individually and in community? It's a question that's worthy of some thought, and I hope we can accomplish that today. But now we have a story for all ages, and I'm going to invite the children to come up. I'm going to sit on the steps here like we used to. You may sit with me. Is it too, you guys want to come up? Is it too cold to sit on the floor? Yeah. Yay. Okay. Yeah. How about, okay. Good. This is a true story. This is a story that I'm telling out of my own experience. Michael, I have a friend who lives in South Korea. He's 11 years old, and his name is Kim Kyung. Kim is not his his given name, it's his family name. If I lived in South Korea, my name would be Firster Annie. That's how they do it. My friend lived for a year in Denver. That's how I met him. Because most people in this country don't understand South Korean names and the backward to us way that they say them. When they were here, his parents put their family name last, as we do. Now, neither is right or wrong. It's simply what we're used to, right? They also chose American given names. Kyung chose Noah, Kim. Imagine moving somewhere where you had to change your name so people would be able to say it without stumbling over it or laughing at you. Noah, or Kyung, is back in South Korea now, which is what we call his country. Many people in this country, I understand, don't know the difference between North Korea, a dictatorship and not friendly to the United States at all, and South Korea, a democracy and an ally of this country, a friend. It is confusing that they both have the same name, but they really don't, because Kyung is now back in his own country, which in the Korean language is called Hankook. Now, maybe we should be calling it that if that's his real name, and there wouldn't be all that confusion. But no one teaches us to do that. I had to read it in a book that Hankook is the name of his country. No one tells you things like that here. Kyung, who I still call Noah, because it's what he writes on his computer when we talk by Zoom every week, has recently had 2 things happen to him. Now, when we went on Zoom last Monday, I first noticed right away that he had braces on his upper teeth. And he said he'll get bottom ones, have braces on them too next week. My mouth is full, he told me, and I remembered feeling from that same way when I had braces when I was 11. But that's not what makes me happy today, he said, smiling largely and showing me his braces. Guess what it is? And when I said I didn't know, he said, think of a friend of yours who makes you very happy. And I got it right away because we talked about this before. And I said, you mean Liam? That's the name of my puppy. And when he nodded his head, I shouted, oh, you've got a dog. And he moved his tablet like this, you know how you can do, and he showed me this brown beagle that he got from the puppy orphanage. And then he said, what do you call that word? And I told him it's called the pound. He's always asking for new words in English but he speaks marvelous English. And when I asked, what is the puppy's name? He smiled at me and he said, I'm going to call her Denver. Denver, as I said before, is where he lived for a year he spent in the United States. It's where he was living when I met him last January. But it's more than the puppy's new name. Denver. Denver is the magic word that Noah will say every day, he tells me, until he is able to move back to the United States, which right now he thinks he wants to do more than anything. You know, I don't know the end to this story. I may never know how it ends. Will Noah move back? Will he keep the name Noah, or will he become Kim Kyung? But I know that an important part of the story are all the names that are in it. So what do you think? What names are important to you? The president's name, that's an important one to remember. How about mom and dad? That's an important one too, isn't it? You, me. Me is an important name. Yeah, I like that. Anybody else? Canada, yeah. Joe is not from the United States, but she came back. She lives here. America, that's another important name when you're living here. You weren't born here either, were you? You were born here, but your dad wasn't. In Russia, yes. We have a lot of people that have that have countries with different names, and they have Mexico. Your dad's from Mexico. That's exciting to have 2 names of countries that you belong to, isn't it? Yes. Well, think about names that are important to you as we sing you back to your seats. You can go to the nursery, or you can Ukraine. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that later. We've got to think about Ukraine nowadays, don't we? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reminding me, Misha. Okay, let's sing the children back to their class, to the nursery, or they can stay if they want to. As we leave this friendly place, love give unto every face. Okay.
Station break. Sorry, guys. Okay. Generosity might be one of the names on the name tags you wrote this morning. We are a generous people. We have given money and pounds of food to the Don't Forget to Feed Me program I mentioned before. And each Sunday we split our morning offering, except for your pledges, of course, with an organization of project that shares our values. This quarter we are funding the repair and rebuilding of our children's playground that we have out back. With volunteers from both the school that lives here during the week and people from this congregation doing the work. Home Depot has agreed to give us a discount on the materials we need to do this work so that our children and the school's children are safe and secure as they are at play here. As the greeters pass among you this morning, let us share this virtue of generosity. Will the ushers please come forward?
Oh dear. Next. Thank you. I want to introduce somebody to you now. Her name is Jennifer Quick, and as she makes her way up to the pulpit here to speak to us today, I want to kind of tell you how I got to know her. I met her 2 years ago, almost about this time of year, and she was scheduled to come and talk to us then, and COVID came, the lockdown. And so she's been on standby, and we've been anticipating her coming here. You've read something about what she's going to talk about, which is reading partners. Jennifer, have at it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to try and hold this. Let me. There we go. Okay. Good morning. My name is Jennifer Quick. I am with the local nonprofit, but also national nonprofit called Reading Partners. So locally and regionally, our name is Reading Partners North Texas. We are an organization in our 12th school year in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, our 6th school year in Fort Worth ISD. So great connection for this morning talking about names. So the schools that we serve and support in have a lot of names thrown at them, right? We get underperforming, low income, high minority. We have all these different names that are thrown at the schools that we work in. And so I was making lots of connections this morning as thinking about what are those names that may cause pain or stress when the families and students that we serve are there. But the reality is stark for the schools in which we serve. So, kind of think in your head right now what percentage of students that you think in Fort Worth ISD are reading at grade level. And if anyone wants to shout out a number that they think, feel free to. But just kind of think on that, and then I'm going to kind of inform you on the current reality. Yeah, I hear some numbers. So right now, and these are numbers that have not been updated since COVID hit, so the numbers are probably a little more stark, but right now, only 15% of low-income fourth graders in Fort Worth ISD are reading at grade level. And that's according to an assessment called the National Assessment of Educational Progress. That's an assessment that's administered every school. They get selected kind of randomly, and they assess students in 4th and 8th grade. So additionally, that same report reports that in Fort Worth ISD, the reading achievement gap between students of color and white students is broad. African American students scored 40 points lower on average, and Hispanic students were 31 points lower than white students. These are really, really stark and grave statistics. I am also a former elementary school teacher, and so when I read those, I'm like, wow, that's looking at a classroom of students. And if you have 20 kids, maybe 2 of them are reading at grade level. And it really breaks my heart. Part of the reason it breaks my heart is that literacy is key and foundational to future success. So the reason that we are in these schools and we focus on students in kindergarten through 3rd grade is that we know for students who are not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, their odds of graduating with a high school diploma are significantly worse. So in fact, students who are not at that level are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school if they're not reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. The reason is, by the end of that grade level, students are transitioning from learning to read to reading to learn. And so if they haven't mastered those skills of learning to read, they're essentially locked out of the content. They can't participate in history. They can't participate in science. Math becomes not just a bunch of foreign numbers, but a bunch of foreign instructions and a word problem, right? So school becomes hard, kids check out, they find other ways to make themselves feel valued in their community, in their home, in their social circles. So at our schools, we serve 5 in Fort Worth ISD, but one in particular is the one I'm here to talk about today, and that is John T. White Elementary. And so if you were to pull out here on Sandy Lane and just drive about a mile north, you would run straight into the parking lot for John T. White Elementary. And with me here today is Hannah Moffitt. Hannah is our senior volunteer coordinator, but she's also wearing another hat this year in that she's basically running our program at John T. White. And so we'll be here afterwards, so if you want to ask questions or learn more about the school and the students that we serve, Hannah can also be a really great resource for you. The students at John T. White the data we have shows that about 93% of the students that we serve qualify for free or reduced lunch from the government. So that's kind of the marker that's used for students living at the poverty line. The campus that we serve at, I don't know the exact number, but probably 97% African American is this campus at John T. White. And so when we think about this, we also think about it as a racial equity issue, an educational equity issue, and thinking about what opportunities we can open for those students by allowing them to get to where they need to be in reading. So when I think about that, I think not just, in the here and now, but later in life. So my husband also happens to work for Tarrant County Homeless Coalition. So we also talk a lot at home about, well, I'm working with these kiddos now, and if we don't get them the support they need, there's the potential that they become one of your clients later, right? And so we know that education can lock people out of opportunities to have a living wage job, affordable housing, access to healthcare, and so much more. So it's so much more than, a cute 8-year-old that you're working with. That person's going to be an adult someday, and we want to make sure that they have access. So where do you come into play in all of this? So our program is volunteer driven. And so while there are members of our staff like myself and Hannah, who's currently serving as an AmeriCorps member with us, we really rely on volunteers who are able to make the commitment to come into our schools at least for an hour a week to work with students. At John T. White Elementary, we are hoping to serve more than 40 students, ideally 50, maybe 60 students, and right now we're serving 21. Now, there's time left in the school year, right? But we're not going to be able to serve those students that are still waiting to be served without volunteers to support them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that volunteer role looks like, and then after services, please feel free to come up to Hannah and I to ask more questions. So the volunteer role, as I mentioned, it's a weekly commitment, about an hour a week. We don't throw you in. You don't have to have taught before. You don't have to know all the rules of phonics to be successful. You don't even have to have worked with kids before. What you just need is the heart and the passion for our students, right? So we train you in our curriculum. It's very easy to follow. Everything is set out for you. So you follow that each week. Hannah is there on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays to support you. And then another member of our team, Carlos, is there on Thursdays. You work with the same student each week. So you really get a chance to build a relationship with that student, know them, get to know their strengths, get to know where areas where they can work on. Maybe they're one of our students of the many who mess up their B's and D's, right? Because those sneaky letters look so similar, and that is a definite struggle for some of our students. So after services today, what we're going to have is, if you're interested and you're like, this sounds like something I could do, or you want to learn more, we will have forms that you can fill out to sign up to participate as a volunteer. And then this Thursday at John T. White, the school itself at 8:30, we're going to host an on-campus training. And so we offer different ways of training. One is a Zoom training online. We're offering this in-person training. And then we offer an online module where you can kind of go through at your own pace. I will tell you, without a doubt, the in-person training where you're sitting with me, getting to look at the materials, going through them, is going to for sure be the one that you will get the most out of. But certainly, obviously, people have things going on in their lives, and Thursday at 8:30 doesn't work for you, that's just fine. The other requirements to serve with our program would be completing a background check with the Fort Worth ISD team. We can also help and assist you with that. And then, obviously, completing your training process. So to kind of close out, I just want to share a quick story about one of the students that I work with who I get to see her every Monday and Wednesday, and she just brings me so much joy. I'm not going to use her name because I don't want to give away her identity, but she's a second grader at John T. White. And so when you think about her experience, she's basically experienced COVID world since she started school. In fact, a year of her schooling was not even really at school, right? And so this second grader that I'm working with, who should be able to read a book on her own, we're still working on vowel sounds. We're still working on high frequency words. And all I think about every day when I see her is just like, I have this like strong sense of urgency that I want to get her to where she is. And, I talked about, you don't have to have experience teaching. You just have to have the love and the passion. That really is what makes my time with her and my tutoring with her successful. I see her, she gave me on Wednesday this giant big hug, and I gave her a big squeeze. I'm so excited to see you. That is what is going to bring her to the point she needs. It's all about the relationships. It's not about, oh, I figured out this pattern in a word. She's figuring that out because she has a relationship with me. She knows she can take risks with me. She feels safe with me. She feels joy when I show joy at her getting to the next thing, the next process that she's mastered. So she's what, gives me hope for all of these students, and they are all so bright and wonderful and unique in each and every way. And so that is what I'll leave you with. But like I said, feel free to come talk with us after services, and we can tell you a lot more. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the time this morning.
Jennifer. Thanks. I belonged to a program like that when I was in Cincinnati, and let me tell you, it is not only fun, it just makes you feel so good because you can see the progress that you're making, the help that you're giving. You can talk to Julie Hevelone. She's been involved in a program similar to this at a different school than John T. White. So I'm really excited about it. Please stop at the table and talk to Jennifer after the service. Well, I want to talk about the name change today, and I want to start out with the courage to name. Shakespeare asked the question, what's in a name, in Romeo and Juliet, when two people from warring families whose honor was in their names, fell in love. And we've been asking that same question ever since for many different reasons, and it turns out that the answer is quite a bit. You may remember that in the first chapter of the Hebrew Bible, called the Old Testament by later Christians, God gives human beings the right to name the animals, and it is considered a significant boon of honor and trust. I remember reading as a child about Native Americans who earned their real name when they became older, and I longed to be able to name myself after some significant accomplishment or some apparent sign regarding who I was or who I was going to be. It was doubly important to me because, unlike all my chums, I wasn't allowed in my house to have a nickname. I could not call my brother Dave because his name is David. I couldn't call my sister Corky, which I did when no one else was around, because her name is Karen. This was a strict rule made by my mother. Later I found out that it started with her brother, who was named after his father, Frederick. But he was called Junior at home, except by my mother, who insisted he be called Fred. That didn't happen until he became a man, except sometimes in school. And later on, he thanked her for that, and she decided that that made it a number one rule in our family. But I hated my given name. It was long and it was complicated, and I didn't find a way to change it until my first grandson called me Annie. And even though I had it changed legally after that, my mother never gave in. And my sister, who lived near her until Mother died, still forgets sometimes to call me Annie after more than 40 years of bearing that name. But it's what I consider my real name. Well, we at what we now call First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church have come down a long, winding path, a trip now going on 5 years in length. But we've come a long way on this road. Last November, we voted to change our name, though we didn't know what we might change it to. And as you may or may not remember, we put together an ad hoc committee before that vote, a committee named the Name Change Committee. Not original, but apt. Joe's on that committee. Mary Kerwin is its chair, aided by Paul Shatman, Roz Hunter, and Peggy Portman. Patrick Gutierrez was originally on the committee but had to drop out to attend to more pressing matters. They have done an amazing job. The charge given to them by me and the Board of Trustees was to figure out how to make this happen without splitting the congregation in two. It was they who suggested we do it in two parts. First, let the congregation decide if it really wanted to change its name, and then decide what to change it to. The first vote last November was a resounding yes. And since then, the committee members have been gathering suggestions, as you probably have noticed. It was slow at first. Just a few names came in, the usual: First Church of Fort Worth, the original name of the original church. How about the Sandy Lane Church, because we're located there? Shady Creek Church, because we have such a physical entity flowing through our property. Then Paul got the idea to put the names up on the window in the lobby. And that's when this began to seem real to you all. This is when you decided to get creative. I have to tell you, this is when I began to get nervous. How are they going to decide, I asked myself. Won't this split the congregation in two? No, I replied, it will split it into 22, or 27 or 30, actually, by the latest count. And still the committee is pushing for more names. But I do have to admit, I find it rather exciting to read the newly added names every Sunday, see the possibilities, wonder, who will we become? And even our children and youth are part of the process of suggesting names. And I do trust this committee. They have a plan, which I have more to say about later. But I do have to tell you that this is not a situation unique to this congregation. I have seen it play out from afar and from within in many churches in our denomination. The first church I ever attended was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and it was called simply People's Church. But there was a problem. This was a church of mostly secular humanists, and they hated what they considered religious language. Oh my. They called their sanctuary the meeting room. The sermon was the message, the call to worship, the opening words. Oh, it just went on and on. But there was one thing they did not rename. That was the name of their church. And they hated it. But the name was carved in stone as a solid inset above the door to the brick building. They could not change their name without a chisel. But there is more to the story. Eventually they outgrew their building, bought a new piece of property, and built a new church. And the first order of business is, what should we call ourselves? And then they took a vote. Guess what their name is now? It's People's Church. They decided it was familiar, and people recognized it. And you know, it wasn't as bad as their parents and grandparents had thought. They have currently 236 members, so their name is not keeping people away, and they are still growing. But that's their story. Ours continues. First, a bit of philosophy and poetry. Take it away, Joe.
Constellation of Our Lives by Karen G. Johnston. Humans make up maps of stars, choosing to ignore some stars, or choosing some stars and ignoring others, to project our imaginations into the heavens. These maps shift over time and across cultures. Name change for the same assemblage of bright points. Drinking Gourd, Big Dipper, Plow, Lost Hunters, Sapatershi in Tibet. I don't speak Tibetan. Humans make constellations by connecting stars. Humans make meanings by connecting stories. Story to narrative to story. Some blaze bright, some are faint. Most are backdrop to the great and mundane human unfolding. Let us imagine the stories of our lives as a starry universe above our heads. As leaders of this congregation, we are tasked and trusted to draw constellations in this, our beloved, small universe. May the stories we connect draw constellations that reflect the shared ministry that calls out the best in us. There are many ways to name a church, a congregation, a religious community. The first two churches I served, I think this is yours.
Okay, did you? Okay, yes. Let's sing though first.
Oh, okay.
Let's sing hymn number 1040 in the teal hymnal. It's about names, and it's called Hush. verses will be on the screen.
I didn't do that on purpose, I promise.
That was tough. And I know it's not one that's familiar, but you sounded great. There are many ways to name a church, a congregation, a religious community. The first two churches I served were both named for their surrounding communities. Shoreline Unitarian Universalist Church was within the Seattle city limits, but it was in a community that had previously been called Shoreline because it was on the shore of the Puget Sound. The other church was in the next town north and was called the Everett Unitarian Universalist Church, located in the city of Everett. And when it grew too large to fit in its building, the second church began to seek a larger property. But there was none in Everett, so we began to explore up the highway that eventually leads to Canada. 5 miles even further north of Seattle was the town of Marysville, where the Methodists were building a brand new church and would one day, soon they hoped, abandon their current building and sell it. They were called the Marysville Methodist Church. We bought the building from them before they moved, giving them the money necessary to finish their new building, but we still shared the building for 2 years before they moved out. That was a whole nother story and a great experience. But what would we call ourselves now, we asked. It would be too confusing to be the Marysville Unitarian Universalist Church in the Marysville Methodist building, which was how the town would think of us for a long time. I encouraged them to think creatively, and they cautioned me about going too far overboard with that creative stuff. They eventually settled on Evergreen Unitarian Universalist Church, Evergreen being the nickname of the state of Washington. It was a good choice for them. And what did I mean when I told them to think creatively? Well, I was recalling my years in Chicago while I was in seminary. We, the students, often got preaching gigs in surrounding Unitarian churches. And when I would drive to my Sunday morning service, I would inevitably pass through Church Row, occupied mainly by Baptists and other conservative churches, which have "make no mistake about me" names. Four Square Gospel was very popular. Enduring Church of the Redeemer left no doubt. Forgiven Sinners, a community of prayer. That was my favorite. I told the Everett congregation we might as well name our churches Just Pass Me By Unitarian Universalist Church, or Don't Mind Me. One does not see too many Unitarian Universalist churches named by their values or their beliefs. We have been used to being called out as heretics throughout history and have gotten in the habit of selecting safe names for our churches. The town we practice in, the street where we're located, the section of town in which we reside. Westside Unitarian Universalist Church used to be located on the west side of Fort Worth until their building burned down and they had to move. And they've taken several votes as they moved centrally and then south to see if they should change their name as they changed their location. But you know, they like their name and people are used to it and they have kept it. More power to them, I say. But that's just one method of naming. First, of course, is the plant your flag, we got here first kind of name. Somewhere near Boston, there is a church named First and Second Unitarian Universalist Church because they merged and neither one wanted to give up their name. That's, of course, what happened here when a breakaway group named themselves after Thomas Jefferson, then still a national hero unsullied by history. And when they merged together again with the original First Church, they joined their two names, like a family that hyphenates its last name rather than slight the bride's ancestors. All Saints is a Christian holiday, which we celebrate the day before Halloween, and the day after it they celebrate not just the saints of the membership, but all souls, everyone. And that became a popular name among Unitarian churches as they gradually moved away from Christian influence. When we merged in 1961, there was a huge discussion about the denominational name. The fair way, they said, would be to include both. But who wanted to repeat that long, long name every time we spoke of their church? The plan by the Unitarian faction had simply been to let people get tired of saying the whole thing, and eventually they would just drop the Universalist. Some self-proclaimed wits said we should use the first two syllables of Universalist and the last three of Unitarian and come up with a new name, Unitarian. But the Universalists were proud of their name and their belief that if there was a heaven, all people would be given universal salvation. Unitarians themselves had been named for their beliefs, even though the non-Trinitarian name had been constructed by their detractors as a slur, a mockery of our beliefs. Some Universalist churches after the merger called themselves Universalist Unitarian churches. The name is the thing. In the 90s, maybe even before, but this is when I noticed it, there were several churches in our denomination that, like People's Church in Kalamazoo, didn't want the word church in their name. It sounds too Christian, they said. Congregations kept their first name but called themselves community or congregation instead of church. Some have the fear of people not understanding they were part of a religious denomination and gave themselves two-line names. First congregation of wherever, second line, a Unitarian Universalist church. The second line appeared on their building and on their stationery, but the members didn't have to say it out loud when they told the people their name. I'm happy to see that we have dared to become creative in proposing our new name. We have suggestions that include got here first location, east side as a book's end to west side perhaps, and some daring value-laden names, including two-line names and ones that don't mention church at all. There is an insert in your order of service that lists all of the name suggestions received to date, and on the other side is a request for even more suggestions. Do not be concerned that the congregational meeting in May will take hours as we vote the list down to one cherished name. The committee has a solution for that, which I will share with you in a moment. In the meantime, go ahead and put on your thinking cap, creative or descriptive, subtle or shouting, who you think we are or who you think we might become. And in a minute, I will explain the process of elimination, and then I will tell you what's going to happen next. But first, let us share our communion of names and milestones. This lovely book is kept out in the lobby on a pulpit out there where you can write your story if you want it shared with the congregation. And Joe Burnham wrote this morning, please put my sister Lisa Shaw in your thoughts and prayers. She's in the hospital with pneumonia and complications. Sorry to hear that, Joe. Joe did say she is getting better. And thank you. Last week you heard about Julie Thibodeau's surgery on her eyes. Carol tells us she is recovering from this eye surgery and will take several months to know if it is an improvement. And finally, I have a shout out. We have a birthday boy today. Happy birthday, Reneel Baker. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Reneel. Happy birthday to you. I do have one more thing to say before we go into our shared silence, and that is please think about the people on the border of in Ukraine next to Moscow. We do not know what is going to happen next, but they are in the news, and I am concerned. I know no one there, but I want us to keep them in our thoughts. Let us share a moment of silence as we consider the importance of the stories that live in this community, as important as the names. Let us meditate together. Today, so if you do have to leave for any reason, please do so. But if you stay, there are refreshments and coffee and the ability to greet people by their new name, their value name. The name change committee told me we want to engage as many people as possible. I sat with them at their most recent Zoom meeting last week. We're exploring how we might vote online as well as in person, if that is possible. The congregational meeting is already committed to the dual platform approach, so the final vote will be both. Here's how the name will be processed until only 2 or 3 are left for the final vote, possibly even just one if the preliminary process ends that way. On the first Sunday in April, you will have a ballot in your order of service, much like the one that you have with all the names on it. And you can you will submit your vote on that sheet, 1 vote per person, possibly 2 the first time. We're still negotiating that. It's not clear how many you will get that first Sunday, but there's a lot of names, and so some of them need to be taken out. But it's hard to decide, so I said maybe we could have 2 votes that first Sunday, because I can't decide on which is my favorite. After that, any names not receiving a vote, or perhaps just one, will be culled from the list. And the next Sunday, the remaining names will be in your order of service, and you will get another chance to vote, this time only once. The process will continue through April, possibly the first few weeks of May. The congregational meeting is set for the 22nd, and the final vote will be ratified on that date. And then the process of making the name change public will begin. Changes will be made to our reader board out front and any listing on the face of the building itself. Stationery is now printed electronically as needed, and so that will be changed immediately. A press release will be put out. The corporate papers will be refiled, possibly as a DBA notification, that is, doing business as, and then the new name. That's the less expensive way to do it, but we do have an anonymous savior who is willing to pay for any changes that cost us money, so we may just file entirely new corporate papers. But I don't think it ends there. Part of the process that will go hand in hand with the name change voting will be reviewing our mission statement and rewriting our vision statement according to our values. Tomorrow, the board and I will be meeting with the council, made up of committee chairs, and we will begin that process. Later, I will bring it to the whole congregation. As we consider renaming ourselves, it only makes sense to look at not only who we are, but who we want to become. What legacy we want to leave when we are gone. If we choose not to put our values in our name, we cannot fail to discuss them between us, to practice them, to live them, to be proud of them, to name them. And I don't think it ends there either. I think you have other decisions to make. Do we need a new logo to go with our new name? And I'm charging the communications committee and the administrator with making suggestions for that, because they are good at that kind of thing. And what about the name of our newsletter? What does it mean anyway, the Courier? It's a kind of an old-fashioned name. It's a word you think you know what it means until you ask yourself for a definition. The dictionary defines it as a company of or an employee of a company that transports commercial packages and documents. Its synonyms are messenger, dispatch rider, letter carrier, runner, message bearer, conveyor, envoy, emissary, harbinger, or herald. But shouldn't the newsletter name go with the new church name? If we called the church by the new name All Souls, or All Peoples, or Everybody, 3 suggestions that have been made, what if we called the newsletter The Voice, something that people and bodies have? A human description of messaging. Or if we decided on Free Faith Congregation, how about The Choice? I don't know. I'm grabbing at straws right now, but let's think about it. Let's be creative. In the meantime, the call for new names is still open. We can still be creative or thoughtful or contemplative about how we are to be known. So turn over the list of names already offered and write your new name suggestion on the back. There's a table out there that Paul has set up. Drop it on that table by the door. Let's bring many names to the final vote. let's sing many names, bring many names. And as you get ready to sing hymn number 23, let me remind you how this song came about. Yes? I don't know if the committee's discussed that absentee ballots. That is a very good question because you might be out of the country. Yes, Mary Kerwin, please put that on the next agenda. See how I delegate? Wasn't that great? Thank you, Anna. Bring Many Names came about when a religion professor asked his class of diversely religious or non-religious students to give him their description of God. And he said they were so wonderful and caring and thoughtful, he merged them into a poem which was later set to music. So please stand as you're willing and able and let us sing Bring Many Names. We come together every week, bound not by creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, how we are together, matters. That's why we tell the stories that live in this community. And we extinguish our chalice that was lit in the name of our togetherness, in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change the world. And so I will say, as I've said many times before, go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. And honor all beings. So may it be in all our lives. Please join us for coffee and conversation in the library.